At 6:17 on a freezing Monday morning, I opened my eyes in a bedroom I had never seen before,
You're safe
wearing
here,
clothes
Michael.
I didn't
What
remember
happened
putting
last
on,
night?
with a woman's
Take your
expensive
time.
perfume
I
lingering in
have
the
some
air.
coffee for
Then,
you.
I looked through the glass doors and saw a snow-covered mansion outside. My stomach dropped. The last thing I remembered was the company Christmas party, my CEO standing beside me, and a glass slipping from my hand. Then the bedroom door opened. She walked in carrying coffee, looked straight at me, smiled, and said, "Good morning, honey." I thought I had just destroyed my career, my reputation, and possibly my entire life in one night. What I didn't know was that the truth behind that morning would break my heart before it put it back together. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the person who seems to have everything is secretly the person who needs kindness the most. My name is Michael Carter, and at 34, I had become an expert at hiding problems behind a polite smile. I worked for a major consulting firm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I spent my days reviewing numbers and my nights worrying about bills. My wife had left 3 years earlier, taking our young son, Caleb, to another state. I rarely saw him except through video calls, and every time he asked when I was coming to visit, I felt another piece of my heart crack. I had promised myself that I would save enough money to bring him back into my life. But then my father became sick, medical bills arrived, and suddenly every dollar had somewhere more urgent to go. At work, I was known as dependable. I never missed deadlines, I never complained, I never asked for favors. My CEO, Hannah Whitmore, was famous throughout the company for being intimidatingly intelligent and almost impossible to read. She was only a few years older than me, but she had built the company after taking it over from her late father. Employees whispered that she lived in a mansion outside the city, drove a black luxury SUV, and had never once shown weakness in public. I had always believed that people like Hannah and people like me lived on opposite sides of an invisible wall. Then came the company Christmas party. The ballroom was filled with golden lights, expensive suits, glittering dresses, and champagne flowing from silver trays. Everyone seemed happy except me. I stood near a window, pretending to admire the snow while secretly checking my bank account. I had exactly $78 until payday, and Caleb's birthday was 2 weeks away. I was about to leave when I noticed Hannah, standing alone near the hallway. She was holding her phone, staring at the screen with an expression I had never seen on her face. Fear. A few moments later, she quietly stepped outside onto the terrace. I almost ignored it. After all, she was my boss. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of my mother sitting alone in a hospital room years earlier, trying desperately not to cry in front of me. I followed Hannah outside. She told me her younger brother Samuel had been injured in a serious accident while driving home from work. The hospital was nearly 2 hours away, and she had just received a call from his doctor. She was supposed to be giving a speech to hundreds of employees that evening, but suddenly none of it mattered. I didn't offer advice. I didn't tell her everything would be fine. I simply stood beside her. Then she asked me whether I had ever been afraid of losing someone. I told her about Caleb. For the first time, Hannah stopped being my CEO and became simply a woman listening to another wounded person. I told her how badly I wanted my son back in my life, how ashamed I was that I couldn't afford the life I thought he deserved, and how every night I prayed that someday he would understand that I had never stopped loving him. Hannah listened without interrupting. A few minutes later, she became dizzy. She had barely eaten all day. I helped her sit down, brought her water, and called her driver. But when the driver arrived, Hannah refused to go to the hospital because she needed to make several urgent calls first. She asked me to accompany her home because she didn't want to be alone. That was the last clear memory I had. Apparently, we arrived at her house around midnight. Hannah spent hours speaking with doctors while I sat downstairs. At some point, exhaustion overwhelmed me, and I fell asleep in her guest room. So when she walked through the door the next morning with coffee and called me honey, I nearly fell out of bed. She laughed when she saw my terrified expression and immediately explained that nothing inappropriate had happened. She had called me honey because her grandmother had always used that word for people who showed compassion without expecting anything in return. Then she told me something that changed everything. Hannah had reviewed my employee file after our conversation. She discovered that I had been quietly working overtime for months, turning down promotions because I didn't want additional responsibilities while caring for my father. She also learned that I had been paying my father's medical expenses and sending every spare dollar to Caleb. She asked why I had never asked the company for help. I told her the truth. I was afraid people would think I was weak. Hannah looked at me and said that strength wasn't carrying every burden alone. Sometimes strength was trusting someone enough to say, I can't do this by myself. A week later, I was offered a new position with better pay and flexible hours. But Hannah didn't stop there. She connected me with a company family support program that helped employees dealing with medical emergencies and family separation. She even encouraged me to take the vacation time I had accumulated for years and travel to see Caleb. I flew to Colorado the following month. When Caleb opened the door and saw me standing there, he didn't say anything. He simply ran into my arms. I cried harder than I had cried since my mother died. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about money, titles, or failure. I was just a father holding his son. Months passed and my life slowly changed. My father recovered. Caleb and I began speaking every evening. I received a promotion based on my work, not pity. And Hannah became someone I could call when life became overwhelming. But the greatest lesson came almost a year after that strange morning. Hannah's brother Samuel had recovered, but the accident had left him with permanent injuries. Hannah had spent months blaming herself because she hadn't answered his call immediately that night. She became distant again, convinced that she had failed her family. One evening, I reminded her of the night we met outside that ballroom. I told her that she had spent years believing leadership meant never needing anyone. Yet, when she was vulnerable, I hadn't seen a CEO. I had seen a frightened sister. I told her that perhaps God had brought two broken people together, because each needed to remember something the other had forgotten. She cried. And then she smiled. Years later, I still remember that snowy morning in Minnesota. I remember waking up terrified, convinced my life had fallen apart. I remember the woman standing in the doorway with a cup of coffee. And I remember realizing that sometimes the most frightening moments are simply doors disguised as disasters. Hannah never saved me by giving me a better life. She saved me by reminding me that I deserved the chance to build one. And perhaps I helped save her too, simply by refusing to walk away when I saw someone hurting. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not alone, and subscribe to the channel. Every engagement helps these stories reach another person who might be silently struggling tonight. Before the story ends, comment, "Everyone deserves a second chance," if you believe kindness can reach people in places we cannot see, because you never truly know what someone is carrying behind their smile. The wealthy person may be lonely. The successful person may be terrified. The strong person may be exhausted. And the stranger you almost walk past may need nothing from you except 5 minutes of compassion. Sometimes, you don't change someone's life by giving them money, power, or answers. Sometimes, you change it simply by staying. And sometimes, without realizing it, the person you stop to comfort becomes the person who helps you find your way home.